Hello Peng-friends, it is your friendly neighborhood gizmo penguin, and we are here on our React channel today with something a little bit different, but also something I've been promising for quite a long time. So I'm very excited to record this video for you guys today. I hope you guys are all doing wonderfully, and if you are new to the channel, if you've clicked on this because you saw the title of the video, well, welcome in. I do have a gaming channel. This is my newer channel. It's a reaction channel, vlogs, discussions, things like that. My other channel is primarily gaming, although I do have some reaction videos on there and like a vlog or two. So yeah, please do also check it out. This video definitely belongs here, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, please do let me know in the comments, and we can try to do more of these kind of analyses or like video essays. I shouldn't call it a video essay. It's more stream of consciousness. But if today anything that I say resonates with you, I hope you will Peng-friends slap that like button, subscribe if you haven't. Again, huge help for the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I do have some questions for you at the end of the video. We'll get to that later. And you know what? If you don't like the video, nothing resonates, that's fine. But today we are going to talk about a slightly more serious topic. I have been pretty upfront about my own experiences with abuse and the resulting trauma and my CPTSD. And it's actually why, when I first saw the Hobbit films, particularly the last film, it's particularly why I love the Hobbit films so much. Now, I know there are a lot of people who dislike them. I respect that. There are a lot of reasons why I know people dislike it. Some people hate the Cillian Tauriel romance. Some people hate all the CGI, right? A lot of people hate Legolas being in it, and there's a variety of reasons why people dislike the films, and you are absolutely entitled to those reasons. I feel quite differently. I didn't mind Cillian Tauriel. I'm not a romance kind of girl. I don't need that in my stories, but there are a lot of people who love Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit book as well who, you know, love romance, and I think that added a little bit of something for them. I didn't feel like it detracted from the story in any way, and we also got the gorgeous Feast of Starlight theme because of their romance, so I'm grateful for that. I also just feel like Cilli is this very reckless young dwarf. He's got a lot of curiosity. It makes sense for his character to be kind of interested in maybe new things. It's very reflective of all the younger generations in every society, right? And then Tauriel as well. I love that she's a Sylvan elf, and I love that she quite well represents what I think Sylvan elves are supposed to be. I also love the music, of course. Every single score, every single cue in these films by, once again, the wonderful Howard Shore is just breathtaking. You guys can't tell me you haven't caught yourself singing the Misty Mountains theme in the shower. You know? Far over the misty mountains rise. It's the echo, you know? But on top of that, I also love that in comparison to the books, you get distinctions between each of the dwarves. It works fine for the book. The book is a children's story. Tolkien wrote it for his son. But if you're going to produce such a story for film, you have to be able to distinguish between the main characters, especially when there's that many of them. And I think the films did such a wonderful job of that. Do I think Tolkien would approve of the changes?
No. No. That.
And you have to keep in mind all the issues going on behind the scenes. Trouble from the studio, actors getting sick. Like, for example, Billy Connolly was dealing with cancer and Parkinson's, and he wasn't able to physically wear his costume, so he had to be replaced by CGI. These things were unavoidable. And honestly, I think despite those things, despite the trouble that the studio gave them, the lack of time that they had to actually do everything compared to Lord of the Rings, I think it still turned out pretty amazingly. But regardless of how you guys feel about the films, I think it's the human moments that really elevate it, and in particular, the moments that quite accurately depict abuse dynamics, which is our cue to get right into it. I lied. Before we get right into it, let me say in advance, this is very important. I talk a lot in this video about mental illness and mental health and things like this. This video is not intended to stigmatize people who are dealing with mental health issues. As I've said already, and as I've been pretty open about, I think, I also struggle with mental health issues. I deal with things like depression, anxiety, and naturally complex PTSD. So I am not trying to stigmatize anyone with mental health issues or struggles. Please understand that. This video is being used to highlight the kind of abuse dynamics that can come from people who are experiencing mental health crises. We have some excellently and just so accurately portrayed scenes of abuse dynamics here. And my hope is that in showing these to you guys, those of you who are also struggling with mental illness as a result of abuse and CPTSD, will hopefully find some catharsis in this. So yeah, be that as it may, as I always say, while I do sympathize with those who have suffered any form of trauma or abuse themselves, if they have gone on to use that as an excuse or justification to harm others, it's something I personally cannot find forgivable. I personally believe that people who have been through that kind of thing should know best. So that's just my personal take on that, just talking about the reality and the patterns I recognize as an abuse survivor with CPTSD. I hope it's going to be helpful for you as well. Let me also add quickly, I am not a mental health professional. I do not have the qualifications to diagnose people or anything like that, and I'm not pretending to be a mental health professional. Once again, I am speaking from my experience as a survivor of this kind of abuse and CPTSD. So now let's get right into it. I really love in these films that, we see from the beginning a Thorin who is a lot healthier. Obviously, he has his trauma because of what happened with Smaug the dragon, and then how he's been treated ever since. You have the battle of, I think it's called Azanul Bazaar as well. So Thorin's been through quite a lot by this point. He's obviously got his traumas. We do see that he has a fear of developing his grandfather's sickness, especially when they're in Rivendell. And if you've seen the extended version, which of course I recommend, as I would for Lord of the Rings, but it creates this very excellent and realistic arc for his character, and it creates quite a satisfying payoff at the end as well. It's another reason why I love these films. Even though I love the book, I just felt like the book didn't quite portray it as in detail as I feel we need to really connect with the character. So yes, the film set that up wonderfully. By the time we get to the third film, Thorin is already fully in his madness. To me, it feels quite clear that the illness really set in the moment he stepped into the mountain. It creates this quite creepy image as if Smaug the dragon's psychopathic cloud of abuse and trauma has just filled all the caverns of this beautiful, vast kingdom, Now, I'm not calling Smaug psychopathic just because I feel like it. If you watch some of the behind-the-scenes videos, he is referred to as being psychopathic. If you guys have lived with people like him, or eventually like Thorin, right, you might have that image of like the very air you're breathing in the house or wherever you are with them. It feels so toxic. It feels like you're almost like stifled and suffocating on it. So for me, that imagery is quite vivid, and it's quite clear the moment Thorin steps in, he's not the same. His demeanor completely changes and starts going downhill after that. We see it in how he suddenly doesn't care about Bilbo when the dwarves realize the dragon has woken up. We see it when he goes in and sees his gold, and he sees Bilbo fleeing, but instead of protecting him or asking him what's wrong, he blocks him. He just, there's nothing, it's all about him suddenly. He's completely lost touch with reality. He wasn't fully in madness yet, because we can see he's still kind of protecting the other dwarves, and he's able to plan like how to get rid of Smaug, but he rapidly descends. I feel like it's quite an organic portrayal of that descent into madness, worsening mental health, to the point of becoming abusive, sadly. The first scene we're going to look at is when Thorin has resumed his role as king, and he is talking to Balin, Dwalin, and Bilbo about the missing Arkenstone. Why don't we watch this together, and then we will discuss the dynamics at play here.
It is here in these halls. I know it. We have searched and searched. Not well enough. Thorin, we all would see the stone returned, and yet it is still not found!
Do you doubt the loyalty of anyone here? The Arkenstone is the birthright of our people.
It is the king's jewel. Am I not the king?
First of all, the body language in this scene is incredible. Each character in the scene has a different kind of reaction to Thorin's abusive nature here. If you've experienced this kind of abuse, you might be quite familiar with maybe all of the roles, maybe you've gone through all of them, as many of us who have lived with narcissistic people tend to do. We get recycled through roles depending on how we've pleased or upset, which doesn't take much, the abuser. Now, You'll notice that Bilbo's body language is very tight, right? His hands are almost always in this scene in some kind of tensed position, like fists. To me, he seems quite clearly to be making himself as small as possible. I recall being in this position many times when an abusive guardian was in a moment of rage or impending rage, and you knew that even the smallest movement could really set them off. Many times you kind of want to just be out of there, right? You'd prefer to leave the room. I used to like to try to get to my own room and lock the door just to be away from that. But it didn't always work, and you have to be careful because, as I'm sure you guys know, if you do make too sudden of a motion, or if they've decided they don't want you to leave the room, they want you to be terrorized, even the smallest hint that you're leaving could set them off. Bilbo right there kind of represents that, kind of frozen fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? He seems kind of frozen to me. What's so interesting to me here is Dwalin. Dwalin is almost playing a kind of fawning role, in my opinion. The way he says this line,
Thorin, we all would see the stone returned.
It's said so gently. Now, we already know Dwalin's character because of the wonderful character setup for the dwarves by this point. We know he's quite gruff. He's a very hardy dwarf, and he doesn't usually seem to care about if he's being gentle or not. The fact that the way he's speaking here is so gentle, you can tell that he feels he's walking on eggshells, and he knows that if he's not gentle, he's going to set Thorin off. Of course, they inevitably set Thorin off, right? This, to me, it reminds me of that fawn response. But to see Dwalin carrying it out is so sad, because we know how much Dwalin loves Thorin and respects and cares about him. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting one to see. I'm sure you guys have ended up playing that role at some point too. I know I have. Balin as well is so fascinating. We'll get to Thorin in a moment. Balin here reminds me of the people that you have in family dynamics, or it could be romance, it could be friendship, that you're dealing with a narcissistic, abusive person, right? Balin here reminds me of my own grandmother. He also looks like her. But then again, they're both kind of Italian origin cutie pies who are tiny and just, sorry, aside. But yes, Balin here reminds me of my grandmother. My grandmother was one of those people who had spent her entire life dealing with the abuse of this person, who knew that the particular person I'm speaking about in our family, who was quite abusive, had these tendencies. At the same time, she wasn't super trauma aware, and she thought this was just, bad nature of this particular person. So it wasn't like she could approach it with trauma awareness. So that's what I think is happening to Balin here. He knows that Thorin's family has this sickness. However, I think he also believes that the Thorin he loves and adores and trusts, just like Dwalin, should be able to reasonably see that they care about him and not snap at them and turn on them, because the way Balin speaks here is almost like he thinks Thorin's behaving like a toddler throwing a tantrum. There's a metaphorical eye roll in the way he delivers this line.
Do you doubt the loyalty of anyone here?
He even looks at his brother like, but it gets creepy. Notice that Thorin caught on to Balin. Not what Balin was really saying. He's not capable in this moment of reasonably examining what Balin is saying and trying to figure out if it's correct or not, if it's true or not. He's too far gone for that. But he did catch on to Balin's tone. Now, we just did a police body cam video. It's my very first video on this channel, where the woman in the video did the exact same thing, had the exact same reaction when she thought that the police officer who was arresting her was making fun of her. She took it as an ego blow. 100% that's exactly what happened to Thorin here. Now, I find this creepy, and this is why I used the word creepy, because I think this is when there's an indication that the abuse is more dangerous. If the person who has become abusive is not aware of the tone or is not aware of being said, then there's an argument we can make that the abuse is not targeted. It's unintentional. It doesn't mean it's okay what they're doing, but they're not fully aware of what they're doing, and we can't fully blame them for it. In my mind, the fact that Thorin latched on to Balin's a little bit condescending tone of voice, but it's absolutely a deserved condescension. The fact that Thorin latched on to that, to me, suggests that it was an ego wound, He's angry that they're not just agreeing with him and telling him, you're right, you're right, you're right. And notice that after he's kind of told poor Balin and Dwalin and Bilbo off, notice it's all about him. Am I not the king? Know this. If anyone should find it and keep it from me, I will be avenged. It's all about him. This is his people's birthright, as Balin said. Obviously, they would want to see it restored to their king, who they have shown such incredible loyalty to all this time. And instead, he's made it all about himself. Just incredible. Now, this scene immediately progresses into yet another scene that I think beautifully highlights the kind of dynamics you experience when you've lived in a situation like this, with a narcissistic abuser in particular.
Dragon sickness. I've seen it before. That look. The terrible need. It is a fierce and jealous love, Bilbo. It sent his grandfather mad.
Oh, no. If Thorin had the Arkenstone, or if it was found, would it help?
That stone crowns all. It is the summit of this great wealth, bestowing power upon he who bears it. Will it stay his madness? No, Lottie. I fear it would make it worse. Perhaps it is best. It remains lost.
There's so much said just with the eyes. What I love about the scene is that you feel like you're watching a real history here. To me, again, in this scene, Balin reminds me of my grandmother, and you guys may have had figures like this in your family too, especially if the abusive person was like the child or grandchild of like an older member of the family who's maybe used to these dynamics, but, you know, especially being elderly, they feel like there's not much they can do. Especially if the person won't get help. Because again, always remember that you can't force people to get help. They have to be willing to get help themselves. And in many cases, people like this don't, unfortunately. When you have somebody who's well aware of this history in the family or these dynamics, they do tend to go grieve privately. I can definitely recall memories of the grandmother that I spoke of, who she would never grieve about the situation in front of the abusive person. It would always be quite privately when she thought she was on her own. So that scene was quite impactful for me, and maybe you guys have had a similar experience. What I really love about Balin in this scene is that he's truly representative of people who love the abuser. Because you notice the way he speaks about Thorin here, he is not disrespectful at all. He's not even calling Thorin abusive. He's pointing out that he's seen the sickness before, it does run in the family, and how painful it is, not only to him and the other dwarves and Bilbo, obviously. I think he feels such grief that Bilbo's had to experience this, but also because it's quite sad for Thorin himself. Like, things would be so different if this hadn't happened to Thorin, right? And on top of this, on top of the fact that, you know, in this scene, we can see that Balin doesn't dehumanize Thorin, right? He still maintains his respect for him and even sympathy, despite the abuse that he's going through. Notice that he doesn't turn Bilbo in. He doesn't admonish him for taking the Arkenstone. Instead, we can see quite clearly that he knows, and he's conveying to Bilbo that Bilbo's made the right choice here in taking the Arkenstone and keeping it. I think Balin's actually quite aware of why Bilbo did it. I think he's probably well aware that Bilbo took it, not because Bilbo is greedy and wanted this for his own treasure, but because he knew that it was going to affect Thorin. And actually, Balin drives that point home by basically telling Bilbo that it will make everything worse. It's just incredible. What I love about the scene is that it shows that even the strongest people who are maybe used to the abuser's bad behavior, right? It still hurts them. They have to go off and grieve privately. And if you guys have experienced this, or if you are the person who's had to do this, had to seek out those quiet moments because you stood by the abusive person, please do let me know, of course. In my case, it feels very, very personal because I've had exact experiences like this. I just think it's another excellent display of a dynamic that we naturally see when we're growing up or living in an abusive environment, yeah. And if you have somebody like Balin, it's always great because even though they technically can't do much to protect any of us, again, abuser has to be willing to get help themselves. There's a little bit less cognitive dissonance because you know you're not alone. You know there's someone else going through it who sees the whole picture, who knows that it's not right, and you get that kind of extra reassurance and support. So yeah, it's just another lovely scene. It's just another amazing human moment, and the acting is top notch. So we immediately go into yet another scene that so incredibly depicts abuse dynamics. This is the scene that really sold it to me, which really made me realize I was watching something where I don't know if maybe someone on the crew was trauma informed or had been through this kind of stuff. You know, like the wonderful Philippa Boyan's one of the writers, right? Like maybe they've been through it, maybe they get it, and that's why they were able to make it so realistic. In any case, let's watch this next scene and then we'll go through it.
What is that? In your hand. It's nothing. Show me.
I picked it up in Bael's garden.
You've carried it all this way.
I'm going to plant it in my garden, in Bagan.
It's a poor prize to take back to the Shire.
One day it'll grow. And every time I look at it, I'll remember. Remember everything that happened, the good, the bad. And how lucky I am that I made it home.
Sorry.
Thorin, the survivors from Lake Town. They're streaming into Dale.
Right from the beginning of the scene, you have this clear image, right? Bilbo's sitting there by himself in these vast halls. It really invokes that feeling of just needing to be alone, right? When you're dealing with someone toxic, you just need that alone time. You need to get away from it. You can't be in it 24/7 because you just break down. So Bilbo sought out this quiet, as he probably wanted to do, right, in the previous scene that we watched. And the music is so incredible that it signals all of the beats in this scene so perfectly, right? Oh, I get shivers even thinking of it. As soon as Thorin appears and starts charging towards Bilbo, obviously assuming that Bilbo's betraying him too, right? Even though there's absolutely no reason for Bilbo to be betraying him. The music gets so intense and quite creepy, and it escalates and escalates. And then Bilbo shows that he has this acorn, and it becomes so tender. And what really gets me is you hear that beautiful theme of the Shire, which reminds Bilbo of his peace and his former life and when things were better. Even probably of the Thorin that he first met, who was such a different person and who he really came to love and trust, right? And it's this beautiful distant echo, like it's a distant memory, but it feels like as it progresses, it's coming closer and closer, almost like Bilbo is slowly getting back the friend that he remembers. Obviously, the music was written for the scene. You know, abuse is not always 24/7, right? It's not like it's happening every single moment of every single day. You will have these instances, especially when the abuse has gotten worse, like it's happening more often. You will have these instances where the person you remember loving, who was not as bad or who was even nowhere near as bad, seems to come back. And you get hopeful. You get hopeful that maybe things are going to change. Maybe you've been able to get through to them, to show them that, you know, you don't intend them any harm. The people around them don't intend them any harm. That you get them to kind of remember how things used to be. I think this is especially true in abuse dynamics where it's friends or like lovers, partners of some kind. In family, it can be like this, absolutely, but it's a little bit different, I would say. We can feel Bilbo's hope in this scene, and understandably. Look at Thorin's acting. Richard Armitage is just a masterclass. And by the way, guys, I should have said this at the beginning. Richard Armitage did study a variety of different disorders and difficult mental health conditions to make sure he did the role accurately. As soon as he sees that acorn in Bilbo's hands, the eyes start to change. It goes from that intense suspicion and anger, and there's surprise. And it melts into this very gentle, kind of heartfelt, I trust you because of that, seeing that. You're so innocent and you're so sweet. I trust you. You're not a threat to me. We can see it in Thorin's eyes. To be able to make that change with his eyes in a single moment is just... And the moment that Dwalin comes back in to warn about the people at the gate, right? The music changes as well, of course. Thorin's eyes instantly change back. He's completely lost any memory of what was just occurring, of that warmth that he was just sharing with Bilbo, the memories of their dynamic previously. It's completely gone in an instant, and immediately goes back to the suspicion, the dread, the anger, the rage, all of it, right? The intense mental illness. It's so incredible that he was able to do that in a single moment in this scene. I mean, what an actor. I don't think he gets praised enough for this role. Incredible devotion to the scene. Honestly, I would love to sit down with him and talk about it all and tell him how much it meant to me personally as a survivor of somebody like this. I think it's also crushing in the scene, seeing Bilbo's eyes light up as well, and the hope that things can go back to how they were. Bilbo is beginning to talk about, we can see that he's just about to try to talk to Thorin about the entire situation, maybe to reveal that he did take the Arkenstone because he feels like he can reason with Thorin, this Thorin. And obviously that hope is doused by Dwalin coming in and delivering the bad news. Especially if you're the children of abusive guardians, I'm sure you recognize this dynamic too. I can certainly think of the times where I would see this look in the eyes of my loved one and think, there's a chance that we can fix this, and I want to because I love them so much. And you get such hope. The hope just builds up, right? And then it crashes, and it's so painful. Unfortunately, I think this is how it tends to go in abusive situations where you never quite get through to the person. So it is, again, quite realistic.
You're going to need this. Put it on. This vest is made of silver steel. Mithra. It was called by my forebears. No blade can pierce it.
I look absurd. I'm not a warrior or a hobbit.
It is a gift. A token of our friendship. True friends are hard to come by. I have been blind. Now I begin to see. I am betrayed. Betrayed. The Arkenstone. One of them has taken it. One of them is
Thorin, the quest is fulfilled. You've won the mountain. Is that not enough?
betrayed by my own kin.
No. You made a promise to the people of Lake Town. Now, is this treasure truly worth more than your honor? Our honor, Thorin. I was also there. I gave my word.
For that I am grateful. It was nobly done. But the treasure in this mountain does not belong to the people of
The eye
Lake Town.
acting.
This gold is ours. And ours alone. By my life, I will not part with a single coin. Not one piece of it.
First and foremost, I need to notice that he said there that this gold is ours. It's a little bit unclear if he means his and Bilbo's, because he clearly is showing that he only trusts Bilbo, or all of theirs, like the other dwarves included. They were talking about the people of Lake Town being owed their share, right? So it's possible he's talking about the other dwarves too. But notice right after that, immediately he goes back into the, I will not part with a single coin. So it really comes down to, it's all about him. And honestly, if you guys think about it, do you feel like he would share the gold, even the gold, never mind the Arkenstone, with Bilbo or the other dwarves? Because I personally don't, not this Thorin anyway. Obviously, Bilbo he's terrified of being found out in this moment, right? But I think it's more than that. And yet again, the actors portray that nuance beautifully. So think of it like this, right? Thorin has shown, by virtue of this intense mental illness that he's experiencing, that even a gift from him, given in a moment where he's calmer, could potentially come back to bite the recipient of the gift, right? At this point, we've seen how he rages at the slightest of things, right? So we can't really trust that he's going to keep his word later on. He has failed to keep his word multiple times by this point. And you guys might have experienced instances like this as well. Keep in mind as well that the mithril is a deeply, deeply precious gift. As Gandalf says, right, in the Fellowship of the Ring.
Bilbo had a set of mithril rings that Thorin gave him. I never told him, but its worth was greater than the value of the Shire.
So that is not a gift to just sneeze at. Is that the phrase? Sneeze at, sniff at? Whatever it is. Bilbo, even despite not being aware of the value of the gift, he's heard that, no blade can pierce it. So he knows it's an important piece. Of course, he's going to worry, or at least I would worry if I were in his shoes, that it's not being given genuinely. Why are you wearing that? Like, where did you get that? That's the thing about when you're dealing with abusive people like this. You never know when the other shoe is going to drop. It's extremely illogical, and it comes out of nowhere, those kind of rages and attacks. So you really don't know if you can accept a gift and believe that it's yours, and that's it. But there are also other things at play here. So for example, Thorin says it's a token of appreciation, right? But what does he mean by that? We can imagine what Bilbo's thinking, because I'm sure you guys have experienced it before. I know I have, as somebody who's grown up with people like this and lived with people like this. You're not really sure what that means when somebody behaves this way. So even if I am allowed to keep it and he isn't going to rage one day and take it away from me, what strings come attached with it? And do I want to really accept it? And what happens if I don't accept it? You kind of do accept it, because if you don't, it's going to make things worse. But there's all the fear, like things you shouldn't have to think about, that comes with a single present. And then I think one of the biggest ones here, to me, Bilbo almost appears to be the golden child, if this is like a narcissistic family dynamic playing out. Because in front of all the other dwarves, in front of Thorin's own people, his own nephews, who arguably he should be giving this shirt to because they're young, they're his own kin, right? You would truly want to protect your own family members. In front of all of them, he gives it to Bilbo instead. And I think Bilbo is picking up on the atmosphere of like that he's being pitted against the other dwarves, almost like he's receiving the present, not necessarily fully because Thorin appreciates him after the acorn moment, right? There must be some of that, but it doesn't feel like it's all of it, right? It feels almost like a slight to the other dwarves. And then at that point, it's like you're damaging my relationship with them as well. And I don't want that. I didn't ask for that. But this is how abuse dynamics go, especially in narcissistic families. There's always that golden child. It's not good for them either. Even if, they may avoid at times the worst of the abuse, this is what happens. If you've been through an abusive relationship, I think you get it. And there's another moment that I will mention briefly. When you become the confidant for abusive mentally ill people, it can be kind of a stomach dropping level of fear, because suddenly you're forced to hold on to their inner thoughts, which are usually completely irrational and even dangerous at times, right? You're left kind of picking up the pieces. Your mind gets really frantic, right? You're trying to figure out how to de-escalate the situation, how to bring that person back to earth and to reality, right? Which we see Bilbo do here, that, we're fine. We've gotten our mountain back. It's going to be okay. Thorin he can't hear it. He's completely incapable of hearing it, which is usually how it goes. Bilbo's face conveys it all so wonderfully, of course, like every single moment. I mean, again, Thorin's eye acting as well. I'd like to also point out very briefly before we continue on to the next scene that I think Thorin here, and in the upcoming scene as well, he kind of perfectly shows that concept of narcissistic fleas. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's the case where, survivors of narcissists and narcissistic people, especially children of them, or if you've lived with them for a long time, you might pick up behaviors of theirs. I would argue that they never tend to be as severe as a real narcissist, but, it's like fleas. It's like the bite that's left behind. Thorin perfectly showcases that here. He's got kind of Smaug fleas, which must be massive fleas. Come on, we needed some light humor in here. I know my jokes are bad, but we do need some joking. But truly, not only the obsession over the gold, which obviously came from Smaug, dragon sickness, but also the fact that he even speaks like Smaug. He uses the exact same words in the exact same cadence. It's just incredible. It's like a physical manifestation of that concept of narcissistic fleas, which is quite cool to see.
The Oaken stone is in this mountain! It is a trick!
It's no trick. The stone is real. I gave it to them.
You?
I took it as my 14th share.
You would steal from me.
Steal from you? No. No. I may be a burglar, but I like to think I'm an honest one.
Poor Bilbo.
I'm willing to let it stand against my claim.
Against your claim? Your claim? You have no claim over me, you miserable brat!
I was going to give it to you. Many times I wanted to, but
what thief?
you are changed, Thorin. The dwarf I met in Bag End would never have gone back on his word. Would never have doubted the loyalty of his king.
Do not speak to me for loyalty. Throw him from the rampart! Do you not hear me? I'll be doing myself. Curse you! Curse be the wizard that forced you on this company! You don't like my burglar! Then please, don't damage him. Return him to me.
Notice how, when Thorin's turned against Bilbo by the end there, right? Notice how he tries to recruit other family members. It was Philly that he tried to get to go hurt Bilbo. He tries to recruit the other dwarves to do his bidding. This is such a common tactic, but any abuse dynamic, but especially abusive homes when the guardian is a narcissistic abuser. This is just my opinion. Obviously, I don't know for sure if this is what the narcissistic abuser is thinking. I think they do this because they need to feel in control, of course, but B, because they need to feel like the people around them who are not their immediate scapegoat, right? They need to feel like those people are at their beck and call and going to do what they need them to do. Because I think they would have no problem acting out on their rage and hurting the person opposite them if it was them alone, but they need to know that the other people are on their side, so they try to recruit them to hurt the scapegoat. And I think this actually works in many, many cases, because a lot of times, unfortunately, these people often become flying monkeys, but people tend to feel like, well, I don't want to become the scapegoat or wind up in Bilbo's position, so maybe I will just do what they ask me to do. Unfortunately, that does happen. It's just so realistic. Another thing I really love about this scene, that you can see this feels like the ultimate betrayal in Thorin's mind, right? Like he truly, truly cannot imagine that Bilbo is the one to have done this. Obviously, he can't hear anything Bilbo's saying. It doesn't really matter to him. He's incapable of just sitting with what Bilbo is telling him and rationalizing it. He's completely incapable of that, as it tends to be in these real dynamics. It's all purely the intense emotion of his illness, which has clearly exhausted him. You'll notice when he turns around and he says, "You," it's so exhausted and debilitated. It's like he has nothing left. I think if we sit here and try to imagine what our own abusers were experiencing, many of them, as we've said already, have experienced their own trauma or abuse, or they have mental health conditions that are just so draining that they do often have nothing left. Again, does not excuse them for taking it out on others. There's no excuse for that. But we can at least sympathize and understand that they must be constantly exhausted. In my case, if I think about one of the abusers in particular, this person was always drained. They always had physical health problems like heart trouble, high blood pressure, anxiety. It makes sense given what they must have been going through mentally. But again, it's hard for me to sympathize with such people because instead of getting help for that and, alleviating their own hurt, they use it as an excuse to hurt others. And then they thereby cause the same illnesses in other people, not only creating new abusers for people who aren't able to get over the trauma of what they've been through, but also creating those physical illnesses, heart troubles, high blood pressure, stomach issues because of what they've done to their scapegoat. So again, I struggle to sympathize with people who abuse others, but just to say that his exhaustion here makes so much sense to me personally. Bilbo stands up to Thorin, right? He's forthright about what he's done, and immediately Thorin reverts back to this rageful version of himself. He immediately tries to dehumanize Bilbo to make him small. He calls him names. All of that trust and care is just instantly gone. And why? Because Bilbo did something that he was allowed to do. He signed a contract for. And Bilbo even explains that he was going to give it, but Thorin was going absolutely mad and mistreating everyone around him. But obviously, again, Thorin can't handle that. He's not equipped to hear that. I do think that Thorin might have been in enough of a rage in this scene to potentially mortally wound Bilbo. It's again another real life situation. These things do happen often. When I was a child, I've had to call the police before because of, domestic violence and things like this, because of the abusive person. So it definitely does happen. I also think, like, even if Thorin felt, a glimmer of guilt here about what he had done, he would have kept trying to justify his actions. Well, he stole from me. He betrayed me. It's just how it goes. I honestly think the only reason the situation was de-escalated in any way was because Gandalf was there. Thorin is in front of people that he already doesn't like, right? I mean, he hates Thranduil, he hates Bard. They have his Arkenstone. To be betrayed, as he sees it, by Bilbo is a narcissistic injury. He is 100% feeling the shame. One of his own people has betrayed him like this in front of his enemies. So this is another way him hurting Bilbo in front of all of them is to try to reclaim his power, to kind of fix the ego injury that's going on there. And I really think the only reason that it de-escalated was because Gandalf was there. And Gandalf is clearly far more powerful than him, higher in status. I feel like truly abusive people do tend to hold back if they realize someone's stronger than them or higher in status, someone who could potentially ruin their lives. Like they're not going to be able to get around this person. If such a person is there, they are going to hold back a little bit. And once again, by the way, we see the narcissistic fleas here. The way he says thief in the scene, it's an exact mirror to Smaug's version of the word. Speaking of narcissistic fleas, there is a fruit fly annoying the crap out of me. Did you see it fly by the camera? Well, I guess it's better than an actual flea. Okay, we're going to go to our last scene. Obviously, by this point, Thorin has been able to kind of realize what he was doing was wrong. He was able to come back to a healthier mindset, who he used to be before the dragon sickness really took hold of him, which is an incredible thing. I don't want to say it never happens, because it's true. It does. On some occasions, it does happen, especially with narcissistic abusers. It's very, very rare, but there are some narcissists who do seek help and try to fix things. I personally wouldn't want to risk it if I don't have to, like engaging with people like that ever again. But it does occasionally happen. And the fact that Thorin is able to do this, I think, is a testament to his character. And I think it shows a great inner strength and is one of his redemptions. I think one of his redemption arcs in this story. So this next scene takes place after that, after he's managed to realize what he's done to himself, to his own people, to his kingdom. And, he's seeking to kind of rectify things. So let's watch this scene. Try not to cry.
Don't move. Lie still. Oh.
Right here. I wish to part from you in friendship.
No. You are not going anywhere.
Notice the eyes.
You're going to live.
I take back my words and my deed to the gate. You did what only a true friend would do. Forgive me. I was too blind to see. I am so sorry that I have led you into such peril.
No, I'm glad you're sharing the perils, Thorin. Each and every one of them. It's far more than any Baggins deserves.
Bilbo's so sweet.
Farewell, Master Burglar. Go back to your books. And your own. Plant your trees. Watch them grow. If more people valued home above gold, this world would be a merry place.
No, Thorin. Thorin.
Bilbo's weeping is so heartfelt and real. Like, even if you haven't been through situations like this, it's hard not to grieve with him. I think for abuse survivors and those with CPTSD, this is just such a perfect form of complex grief, which you inevitably experience when you grow up in families like this, or again, if you've spent any amount of time living with people like this. Right when Bilbo's gotten back his friend has gotten through the worst of his illness. He's come back to be the person that Bilbo remembers him first being. And more than that, he's redeemed himself. He's apologized. He's taken accountability. He recognizes the harm he's caused, and he says that clearly. And he's clearly so sad about what he's done. There's so much regret, right? Regret and pain. And again, he's redeemed himself because he's done all he could to protect his people throughout this battle, after kind of coming back to himself, overcoming his own mental illness. Finally, he's reached this point where he's back to the dear friend that Bilbo loves. And now he has to die. It means that Bilbo has to live on with once again the hope crushed. After all that, with that goodness back, he doesn't even get to enjoy it. Thorin doesn't even get to enjoy it, right? To live healthily and rule over his kingdom. Now, would it have been sad if Thorin had died, but hadn't become an abusive figure before that? 100% it would have been sad. No matter what, it's sad that this character we followed this journey on, and a dear friend of Bilbo's, is dying. But when you add this more complicated dynamic, where the person has put you through so much trauma and hurt, and you still love them throughout it, you still had hope and faith in them, and that comes true, that hope and faith actually works out, and they manage to pull through and apologize and make amends, and now you have to say goodbye. I think aside from people who have experienced this kind of dynamic, and if not experienced this exact scenario, at least imagined the scenario, it's hard to grasp how deeply painful it is. There's more to it than just that, of course. A lot of us, if we had narcissistic guardians, we're dealing with aging guardians. And narcissists do tend to get much worse as they get older, in such a way that many of us are estranged from those narcissistic and abusive people. But I think all of us deep down, especially again, if we're children of narcissistic abusers, we secretly hope that before they have to go, that they'll do this, that they'll apologize. And they'll say, I did this and I hurt you. And you didn't deserve that. You were an innocent child. I brought you into this world. I should have loved you with all I had. I want to leave this world with you knowing that you didn't deserve that and that I should have been better. It's such an important piece of closure for the survivor of people like this. And it usually doesn't come, to be honest. We usually don't get it. I think the situation that we're seeing here is quite rare, but recognizing what Bilbo has been through with Thorin, and recognizing our own situations in their situations, recognizing what we went through, I think we can get such incredible closure and catharsis from this scene. And it's painful again, because it's sad knowing that they don't get to live out the rest of their days with that renewed friendship and trust and health, just good health, right? They don't get that. But at least you feel the closure of amends, real change of action. And I will never get closure from that narcissistic person about what they did, about any of what they did when I was a child, the situations they purposely put me in. But if I imagine being Bilbo here and that person is Thorin, I can forgive them, and I can imagine what it would be like to be able to, before they're gone, have that closure and that loving goodbye, because I do still love that person despite what they've done. I'm always short of words when I see these scenes because they're just so real. Now, there are other moments where Thorin showcases the nature of abusers, largely due to hypocrisy, right? We hear him claiming the people of Lake Town have much to be grateful for, despite having been completely displaced and massacred, and largely due to his own actions against Smaug, right? Yet he cannot be grateful for all of the gold that he has left. He needs the Arkenstone, and maybe even then he wouldn't be grateful, who knows? He's taunting and laughing at Thranduil about the white gems, right? And how bad Thranduil wants them without being able to recognize that he's doing the exact same thing, right? He's become equally mad about the Arkenstone. And, he's going against his own word about sharing the wealth of the mountain with the people, despite, I would argue, his much more mentally healthy self at that time, genuinely meaning it. All those things are there. And what I love as well is that on top of showing how this kind of abuse affects the people who love the abuser, it also doesn't make the abuser into this impossible figure. It shows that abusers can be redeemable. I mean, it would take a lot. And like I said before, usually it doesn't happen, but there is the possibility for them to redeem themselves. I love that. It makes Thorin's character so fully fleshed out and just likable, because despite what he's done, he really does redeem himself at the end. By the end, we remember the good, valiant version that we met in the first film. And even during his illness, there are moments where we can see that good nature come through. His gift to Bilbo is, again, a genuinely generous gift. And even by the end, in the death scene, he clearly cared about Bilbo. Even probably during the illness, he said, plant your trees. So he's remembering that acorn, right? That moment really meant something to him. He cares about Bilbo enough that he knows what's important to Bilbo, his books, his armchair. There are glimmers of goodness. I love that because it makes him a fully fledged character. It makes him redeemable. It's just also wonderfully nuanced and organic and realistic. I just adore it so much. As I said before, the Sylvan Elves, they're fascinating and wonderfully flawed compared to their high elf counterparts. It was great to have one as a main character, in my opinion. Smaug's attack on Lake Town, I can still remember how I was shivering in the theater the first time I saw it, actually shaking in the seat. The battle with Galadriel and Elrond and Saruman against Sauron and the Nazgul, I loved that. It's just so epic. And Azog's hand massager arm. I mean, before he runs you through with it, he'll give you a nice head massage. And also there's a tasty treats moment. I call it Azog's tasty treats. He's eaten something truly tasty, he's so happy. Yes, I'm intentionally ignoring maybe the overuse of CGI and, the extremely annoyingly angsty Legolas. I hate him in this film. We're ignoring those things, and maybe the points that you guys would say are the negative points of the production, because I feel largely it's absolutely redeemed by the human moments. It's a fantasy story, and yet, to me, it so accurately portrays abuse dynamics, maybe better than a lot of realistic fiction stories, or even nonfiction. We can really identify with these characters and what they're going through. And I think that's why it makes for such a beautiful form of catharsis. It's one of those things that when you deal with such heavy trauma as CPTSD, you need these stories, you need these characters that get you through. That's actually, I think, why Tolkien wrote a lot of the things that he wrote. He really believed in the value of escapism. In any case, let's end this. I'm sure this has turned out to be quite a long video. I really hope that you enjoyed this. I really hope you're able to get something from it, especially those of you who are trauma survivors, especially of abuse, or who are suffering with CPTSD. I hope it's offered you some hope and catharsis, and the feeling that you're not alone, and that there are beloved characters and stories like this that go on the journey with you. Definitely let me know in the comments if it's changed anything for you. I mean, do you agree with my take? Do you disagree? Has this perhaps impacted your view of the films overall? Maybe it's given you a slightly more positive impression of the films as a whole. That would be wonderful if so. And if there are any other scenes that you feel like showcased the abuse dynamic well, especially if you're a survivor of these kinds of things, please also let me know. I'd love to hear your opinion, because next time I go to watch the film, that would potentially add something new for me to examine and get into in the production. Yeah, this has been so meaningful to do, so I'm really, really glad we got to do this. Peng-friends, I hope you'll take very good care of yourselves as always, and please be kind to yourselves. We kind of are having narcissistic abuse on a societal scale right now, which has made life really, really difficult. I hope we can get back to the mindset, Bilbo's mindset in particular, of courage and kindness and fairness, and what Thorin says at the end about valuing the good, simple things, right, instead of gold. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Take good care, Peng-friends. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure. Let me know if you'd like me to do another one. Yeah? I'll catch you next time. Bye, bye, bye.